So Lake Harriet Spiritual Community, please help me welcome Jen Grant.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, happy Sunday, and welcome to this beautiful space that we all get to show up and connect and gather. You know, Lake Harriet Spiritual Community, one of the things that I love about this space, and when I say one of the things, there are many things, and we could stand here all day and talk about all of those things, but I'll just give you one of the things is the way that they run their Sunday services. And the way that they do that, even if you've been coming for a long time, maybe you haven't noticed or it hasn't been explicitly announced to you that each month they determine a theme. I don't know if that's determined by Gary or the powers that be or whoever decides this theme, but each month there is a theme. So as speakers, we show up knowing ahead of time what our theme is going to be. And what I find really fascinating about this from this point of view, so I'm going to let you in behind the curtain just a little bit, is that when Gary reaches out to me and asks me if I want to be a speaker, he doesn't tell me what the theme is ahead of time. So ahead of time, he doesn't say, hey, Jen, I know that you love leading with love. We're going to do a theme on leading with love. You'd be a great speaker. We'd love to have you. How perfect would that be? That would be amazing, right? Instead, he reaches out and says, hey, Jen, I have these 2 dates available in December. Would you like one? And I just kind of look at it and look at my calendar and say, yes. And I trust, right? I trust. I am a student of the divine, beautiful, loving universe, and I trust that if I am being reached out to, that the topic is going to be something that fits. So I respond back and I say, yes, I would love the 19th. I can squeeze that in with everything going on. I would love to be there. I love being in this space. And then inevitably, every single time, Gary will respond back and say the topic. And this month he responded back and said the topic is becoming a lighthouse. Becoming a lighthouse. Now, I don't know how meaningful that phrase is to you, but for me, I immediately got teary-eyed when I read it. For a number of reasons. One, anyone in here, show of hands, anyone in here familiar with human design? Oh, a handful of you. Nice. So in human design, we're not going to go into that. You can check it out. You can Google human design, type in your name, your date of birth, and it will give you your personal human design. There are 5 different types in human design. There are reflectors. They make up about 1%. Manifestors. They make up about 8%, give or take. Projectors make up about 21%. And then generators and manifesting generators each make up about 35%. They are the largest part of our population, about 70%. I am part of the 20% as a projector. And in human design, projectors are known as the lighthouse. So that was one piece when he said that. I was like, are you kidding me? Becoming a lighthouse, and how much that aligns with my own personal path, my own personal journey. And like it or not, this isn't about me today, and yet it's always about me as the speaker, and it's about you. My role is to help make it about you. So that was one piece, becoming a lighthouse, projector, how perfect. Like that is my mission in life anyway, is to help be that guiding force. On the drive here, I was speaking with my husband, bless his heart for showing up. And I was asking him, I feel like there needs to be a personal story around becoming a lighthouse. Yet every time I think about sharing a personal story about becoming a lighthouse, it feels so cocky. It feels so ego. You know, if I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stand up here and tell you how I've been a lighthouse. That feels so stuffy. Does that make sense? How do I tell you how I've been a lighthouse? And yet that's part of the role too, as lighthouses. We stand and we shine and we share confidently with strength and bravery. So when Gary sent that email back and it said becoming a lighthouse, there was that first piece, the projector piece, and that landed so personally for me. The second piece that landed, I know some of you were here when I spoke last in July. And if you were here with me in July, you might recall that I was 41 days out from my mother having passed away. My mom passed away June 1st. What has transpired in the last 5.5 months has been, I don't even know one word to put it in. It has been up and down. Since my mom passed away, her husband, my stepdad, passed away 3 months and 3 days later. A month and a half, almost 2 months after he passed away, about 41 days ago, so 41 days when I was here last time, my mom passed away. 41 days ago, my dad had open heart triple bypass surgery. And I've had the chance to become a lighthouse for my dad and his wife during his healing. I had the distinct, it's been a privilege and a pleasure and an honor, and also very challenging. We're going to talk about the contrast a little bit as a lighthouse, because what do we think of when we think of a lighthouse? When you think of a lighthouse, what comes to mind?
Always there.
Always there. True. Yeah, they're not going anywhere, are they? And we have proof of that. I'm going to share something about that with you. What else do you think of when you think of a lighthouse? What did you say? Putting out clarity. I like that. Yeah, putting out clarity. I had a friend, I reached out to my group, Facebook, right? When we want to find the truth of something, we go to Facebook. A little tongue-in-cheek, but still. So I put out a note to my Facebook friends. What do you think of when you think of Lighthouse? What comes to mind? And a dear friend of mine shared a little story. And in essence, if we could sum it up in a phrase, it would be clarity, putting out clarity. She was feeling very foggy and very confused and very, shall we say, spread out. And she connected with a friend who was able to, in her words, she became my lighthouse in an instant and helped bring the clarity into focus and helped take all of this and bring it into focus. So it's exactly what you said, putting out the clarity. What else do you think of when you think of lighthouses? What else comes to mind? A beacon. Yeah, that bright light, right? Bright light, the beacon. The beacon, those things all come to mind for sure. So when Gary asked me about this, I was in the midst of, we had found out my dad was going to be having this surgery, and it was a quick turnaround. We found out, and he was going into surgery in the next week. And in fact, during that time, that week and a half of prep, we realized how severe and significant this was, that he had had an 80% blockage, a 90% blockage, and one of them was 100%, the main one over the front, 100% completely blocked. And that when they went in and checked it out, they realized that he had, in fact, at some point had a major heart attack, and they don't know how he was still standing here. Talk about grace, right? Now, this on the heels of everything else. And if you know me or you've seen me present, my mission, as Neil said in my bio, is to lead with love. I can't help but look at situations from a lens of love, from a lens of how is this working for me? What's the opportunity in here for me? And I know not everyone does that. I know that's part of how I'm meant to show up in life. And so when that email came by and Gary said, becoming a lighthouse is the topic, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Because on the one hand, yes, the projector in me is like, we've got this. We can talk about this all day long. And on the other hand, like, are you kidding me? In the middle of everything going on, in the middle of showing up and supporting my dad for 5 weeks during his recovery, in dealing with situations and people that I live this way. I live very spiritually. I choose to live an aligned life. I choose to eat very cleanly. You might call it a very privileged life. I choose to show up in this space. I choose to live from a place of intention. I choose to not bring in the news. Like, I just choose to live a very clean, aligned, lighthouse-like life. My dad and his wife, bless their hearts, don't choose to live that way. My mom, bless her heart, she didn't choose to live that way either. Yet when my mom was literally dying, she told me, I need you to promise me that you're going to do everything you can to take care of yourself and continue sharing that with others. Because had I listened to you, I probably wouldn't be here. Fast forward, and there I am with my dad and his wife choosing. I recognize that I chose to show up in that space. And yet, how do I show up in that space? Do I show up tall and lighthouse and holding my authentic self? Yes. And let's talk about the other side of lighthouses. What else do we know about lighthouses? Lighthouses wouldn't exist if there weren't storms. Lighthouses exist on purpose because there are the most rugged coastlines and because there is danger all around them. They exist on purpose because the storms have shown us that if they don't exist, there will be death. There is a lot of contrast when we look at lighthouses, yet somehow we've come to this fantastical idea and belief that lighthouses are beautiful and sparkly, and they have all these great colors, and they stand tall and strong and brave, and they're made of beautiful stone, and they have light, and they bring a lot of hope, and they bring a lot of safety, and yes, they do. And they also signify isolation. They signify alone. They signify death. They signify dark. They signify storms and some of the hardest times that we can come across. So becoming a lighthouse, yes, there are the beautiful components about it, and yet also becoming a lighthouse also, in my mind, means recognizing that she or he is not a symbol of a lighthouse without their storms. My storms, I am such a better human being today than I was 6 months ago because of everything I've been through. When we choose to take our storms, when we choose to take the darkness, when we choose to take the jagged edges and the rocks and the not so pretty stuff around us, and we embody that, we notice it, we learn from it, we take from it what we can, it makes us taller and brighter and more worthy of shining, I believe. So becoming a lighthouse, we all want to take on those beautiful aspects, right? Like, oh, I want to shine. I want to stand up there and shine. I want to bring clarity to people. I want to bring hope to people. I want to inspire people. I remember when I was a brand new baby speaker, I loved speaking. Seriously, when they ask you, what are people most afraid of? What's the number one thing people are most afraid of? Public speaking. They're more afraid of standing up here and speaking to you than they are of dying. Dying is number 2. Crazy. I've always wanted to be a public speaker. I remember being little and presenting to my stuffed animals. Like, a little ridiculous, but I did. I would line them all up, many hundreds of them, and they were a great audience. I remember that. I remember always wanting to be a speaker. And as a baby public speaker, early on, I thought if I could leave you feeling just a titch better, if I could leave you feeling a little inspired or a little hope or a little clarity or a little brighter, then I've done my job. Now, as a 45-year-old, having been in speaking for 15-ish or longer years, 20 if we go longer than that, what I realize now is that my role, if I only leave you with that peace, that's not a bad thing, right? If you walk out feeling a little inspired, that's not a bad thing. I would much rather, though, bring you in to the soup with me. I want to bring you into some depth. I want to get you to think. I want to get you to expand. I want to get you to explore. I want you to go within. Anyone can turn on something on TV and you can feel a little inspiration, right? I'm going to read you some quotes. Love quotes. Who doesn't love a good quote? I'm going to leave you with some quotes, and those will give you some inspiration. They're going to give you a little, bolt of hit. But I feel like if we don't also dig into the contrast, if we don't also dig into the challenges, we're missing the mark on humanity. We're skating over some real things that are going on if we only talk about becoming a lighthouse from the perspective that we all want to talk about. It's easy to talk about the light and the love and the clarity and the hope and the safety that a lighthouse offers. It's a little more challenging when we dive in and talk about the dark and the depth and the storms. But those are the things that make us. Those are the things that give us that solid foundation. Years ago, when I first started speaking and sharing stories and messages, I would tell people that as I changed my own life, so changing my own life, I used to believe, and this feels so very long ago, that it almost feels like a different person, When you've been on your spiritual path, at some point, when you look back, it's like, I'm so disconnected from her, yet I know she's me. And I honor her and I love her, but it's such a weird experience. Years ago, I would be the cynic in the back, not saying the back row is cynics. Y'all are not cynics, that's not what I'm saying. But I would be the one in the back with my arms crossed tightly. Really? Yep. And I would be sitting there in my brain thinking, I had the most powerful belief that would run through my brain was, I'm not worthy, people don't like me, so why even bother? And the overarching theme, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And I sat in that back row with all of these reasons stacked up against me why I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough because when I was born, my mom looked at me and said, I don't want her, you can have her, and handed me to my dad. I'm not good enough because as I continued to grow up, I continued to hear stories about not being good enough. My mom used to cut my sandwich straight up and down, and she would tell me the reason she cut it straight up and down is because she didn't love me that day. And if she cut my sandwich diagonally, it meant she loved me that day. So as a little girl, what's the first thing I do when I get on the school bus? Check my sandwich, right? Did mom love me today? Or did she not love me today? So even as a little girl, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, on my way to school, I knew I wasn't good enough because the majority of the time my sandwich was cut straight up and down. And I carried that with me then. And as I moved through school, I would get good grades, but I'm not good enough because I wasn't getting A pluses all the time. I had some A's and some B's, but it wasn't all A's, so I must not be good enough. I must be doing something wrong. And then as middle school comes, let's just throw off all the deal. Middle school, for any of us, we can read anything into middle school. Middle school was terrible. You're not pretty enough for the boys, but the girls hate you too. And where do you fit? What does that look like? I'm not good enough, and I knew it. And the stories kept piling and kept piling and kept piling. And by the time I'm 20, 25, 30 years old, I held that belief so tightly. And I talked about how there was so much stuff surrounding me. When I would have a conversation with someone, it was always an excuse about why not. Well, because this happened, and then this happened, and don't you know that I've also been through this? And by the time I was 32 years old, I got so sick of myself and so sick of that life. And I listened to a speaker that stood on stage being a lighthouse. And as he stood on stage being a lighthouse, talking about possibilities, and not only talking about the possibilities, but also talking about the dark stuff, talking about the challenges. Because a lot of people that we look at today, we only see them from the light side. We don't see the dark. We don't see the challenge. So when we look at them, we say, well, that's good for you because you've got it all together. Your life is perfect. You haven't been through any challenges, so we don't relate. And this speaker at 32 years old, I sat in that row. Mind you, I was in the front row this time, so bless you. I was in the front row this time, and that speaker, for the first time in my life, stood up there being a lighthouse, telling about how hard his life had been. And for the first time, I thought, it's possible for me. Changing my life is possible. If you can have hard time and still be doing that, and inspiring people and showing up and sharing messages, maybe I could also change my life. Long story short, spoiler alert, I changed my life. And from that point on, I dedicated myself to expansion, growth, learning, connecting. What has now turned into a mission to lead with love for self, others, and earth. And intentionally in that order. I remember as a little girl, also why I believed I wasn't good enough. I believed for a long time, for many, many years, which is one of the reasons why I love Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. Growing up in the church for years, I believed I was forgotten about. I believed I wasn't good enough. I remember going to people that I thought were, quote, closer to God than I was, and asking them, how do I talk to God? How do I hear God? And they would say, well, you just have to pray and get quiet and listen. And so as a little girl, do you remember seeing that picture years ago with the bed and the little girl propped up next to it, kneeling on the ground? I swear that was me. It's not for real, but I used to do that. I would ask this question, and then I would go home, and I would pray, and I would sit there, and then I would listen. Nothing. And then I would go back, and I would ask again, how do I want to talk to God. How do I hear God? I don't understand. How do I hear God? And the same thing would be told. Pray and then get real quiet and then just listen and he'll talk to you. And I did that again and again and again and again. And as a little girl, I was also taught, anyone taught joy, Jesus, others, yourself? Joy. I was taught Jesus, others, yourself. Meaning, Jesus first, then others, then yourself. So those two things, I took those two things, and when I started intentionally on my path, I flipped it all on its head. And my mission is to lead with self, others, and earth. Self first, because if I'm not taking care of me, I can't take care of you. If I'm not taking care of me, I can't help Earth. I have to honor myself. And what I found out about the praying and getting God to speak to you, God's not going to talk to us in a big booming voice. It's going to come through us. It's going to sound like us. We're going to hear it. And whether we use the word God or Spirit or divine or love or Yahweh or Allah or whatever word you choose is fine with me. Recognizing and understanding that we all have that connection within us. We all have that divinity within us. When you get quiet and you pray and you listen, it's going to sound like your voice coming through. It's not going to be some big, booming, scary voice over the loudspeaker, which is what I thought for years. And so when that man stood on that stage for me when I was 32 years old, and he's standing there as a lighthouse, not telling me he's a lighthouse, because you know what? Lighthouses don't tell us, hey, by the way, I'm your lighthouse. Me, got it, me. I'm your lighthouse. Just so you know, lighthouses don't go out and grab boats, right? They don't go out and grab them and guide them to shore. Lighthouses just stand there doing their thing. They're standing there strong and in their strength and in their confidence while the waves crash around them, while the storms crash around them. So as he's standing on stage being this lighthouse, and I'm taking this in and recognizing, wow, I have that opportunity too. Jim Carrey says, I promised you quotes. Let me give you a couple quotes. I give you a name you know, and then I have a few more of maybe names you know. Jim Carrey says, I feel that we're all lighthouses. My job is to shine my light as brightly as I can to the darkness. I love that. I love that. There's another one that says, lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. Anne Lamott. Here's one more for you. A lighthouse is not interested in who gets its light. It gives it without thinking. Giving light is its nature. That's Mehmet Ildan who said that. But again, I feel like those are beautiful and they leave us with a little bit of a tingly feeling like, yeah, that feels good. But they don't really speak to that contrast. They don't speak to the darkness. So what is with the contrast? We have life and death. Both of those are featured in a lighthouse. Lighthouses naturally signify life, hope. I'm almost there. I'm going to make it. While at the same time, they're riding that wave of death because if their captain, if the ship, if the people on the boat aren't mindful, they could still perish. So there's that contrast. They're living right in the middle of it all of the time, life and death. We know that lighthouses and their contrast are light and dark. Light and dark. Obviously, they're light. That's their name, right? Their namesake is light. Lighthouses. Their job is to bring the light. Their job is to bring the light 365 days a year. Constantly, always showing up, always bringing that light. Now, I don't know about you, but as a human lighthouse, that's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask. And becoming a lighthouse, I think we miss the mark if we don't have that conversation. I am a speaker. I love to speak. My job is to bring light to people. And also, I'm a human. There are times when I can't bring that light to other people. And you know what I've found really fascinating? Especially in the last 5 weeks as I've been intentionally put my business aside and intentionally put myself in a place that is almost a complete 180 of how I live my life. My dad, bless his heart, watches news for 2 or 3 hours in the morning, right? And then watches news for 2 or 3 hours at night. Now, what I find most fascinating about this is it isn't that we are going for various perspectives so that we can then come together and have a, great expansive conversation, because I'm all for that. Bring in all of the conversations. Let's have an expansive conversation. To me, that brings in more light too, right? If I can sit down with someone who maybe I don't understand their perspective, but I'm open to let's have a conversation. Not the kind of TV we watch up there. It's the same stuff all of those hours, all 4 to 6 hours of the day. And it's conversations wrapped around that. And I intentionally put myself in that position because I know that on the flip side, it's going to make me a better human. It's going to give me more compassion. It's going to give me more grace. It's going to give me more opportunities for forgiveness. And what does that make me on the flip side? In the moment, not easy. In the moment, if we're really honest, it's sometimes really challenging and makes me cry and makes me sad and makes it really hard. But that's part of being a lighthouse, right? If I'm choosing this as a role, if I'm choosing to be a light keeper, I take those storms on. I let them come at me. I look at the dark and I see the dark, and I still choose to stand tall and be the light. Maybe not in that moment because I'm a human. I am not a machine that was built. I am human. As lighthouses that all of you are, at least to some degree, I need you to recognize that and remember that you too are human. And it's okay to have those dark experiences. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be confused or angry or hurt. Those are part of our humanity. Those are part of what makes us stronger if we choose. What's another contrast that we can think of? I have some written down. Safety and danger, that's another one. Safety and danger. Obviously, lighthouses represent safety. Land is nearby. Another contrast is beginning and end of a journey. So land is nearby, the end of one journey, the beginning of another as you come to safety, to shore. But again, what does that safety also signify? Potential danger. We want to be mindful of that. Life is always serving us various ways. The same experience that I'm living could be viewed at from a different perspective. Do you agree? I could see the life that I'm living from a different perspective and then choose to have a completely different experience. And that's kind of the lighthouse way as well. A lighthouse is choosing to see the storms and say, yeah, I see the storms. I'm going to take them on, and I'm going to trust and know so confidently that I will remain tall and strong and brightly lit through those storms. Thankfully, lighthouses don't go, well, maybe not that storm. I think I'm going to turn off for now because that one's a little too much. As humans, we get that choice. Lighthouses don't get that choice. As humans, we get that choice. You get to choose. Do you want to stand tall and shine bright, or do you not? And what does that actually mean? As humans, how do we show up and be a lighthouse? What's required? So let's look at the structure. Let's look at the actual components that make up a lighthouse. What do we have? We know that lighthouses are often on the edge. They're on a cliff. They might be in the middle of jagged rock. So what's the most important thing that they have? It's their foundation, right? Their base, solid. They are solid and strong. Solid and strong. Same with you. One of the most important things, the most beneficial things you can do for yourself is be solid and strong. Be confident in who you are. And the perspective that you bring, or the light that you shine, the clarity, that could be 1 in a million, right? We don't all want to have the same light. In fact, did you know that lighthouses, if you go to any given area where there are lighthouses, they are not going to be shining the same way as each other. There is a lighthouse list, apparently, for captains to know that when it shines a certain way, or almost like Morse code, like the light has Morse code kind of built within it. And depending on how the light actually looks, it will tell you the location of the lighthouse so that you know exactly where you're at. A captain, maybe not you or I, because I don't read lighthouses, but a captain would know their location based on the actual way the light is shining. Lighthouses are all unique that way. They all have their own various characteristics. The way the light shines, if they have a foghorn or not. If they do have a foghorn, that will be going off differently than other foghorns in order to help them identify. The colors of the lighthouse, if it's daytime and you can see it, the colors will all signify something different as well. The thing that they all have in common, though, is they all have that strong foundation. So if we look around the room, none of us look the same. If we talk to each other and have conversations, we probably have very different experiences, very different stories, very different filters, very different likes and dislikes. That makes us unique, much like all of these various different lighthouses. Yet what we all need to have, whether you choose to be a lighthouse or not, is a strong foundation. How are you taking care of yourself? I can't tell you what's best for you. You get to decide. How are you showing up? Showing up in a place like this is a beautiful practice. This gives you that connection that being a lighthouse can often need, is connection. I don't know about you, but for me, when I choose to stand up and be strong and be tall and own my light, it can sometimes feel lonely because I'm not bowing down to what everyone else thinks. It can be a lonely feat to hold position as a lighthouse. Showing up in a space like this where there are other lighthouses and other light keepers is very comforting. What else does the actual lighthouse offer? Of course they offer the light, right? We know the light at the top. The light is always on. It's always spinning. It's always being shown in some form or fashion based on their unique characteristics. But what does that light also have? It also has a ring of protection around it. I want you to remember that for yourself as well, that we want you to shine, we want you to be bright, we want you to stand up and own your truth, whatever that means for you. And recognize that lighthouses exist because storms exist. Is it possible that you are in this space today, that you are living in this time today because of the storms that exist in our humanity? And when you choose to show up as the light that you are, that is a salve on humanity. That gives other people a sense of clarity, a sense of hope, a sense of wonder, curiosity. Being curious about understanding what that looks like for you will help build that protection around your light. So you can shine and show up and also honor you. Yes, sir. Yes, please. Great question. So I'm going to repeat it for our audio the best I can. So the question is, 13 years ago when I'm in my really dark spot, tell me if I get this wrong. When I'm in my really dark spot, what's my first step? When I know that I want to change my life, what's my first step? Do I start building the structure? Do I do something else? Like, what's the first step? Is that a fair analogy? Okay. Great question. It's going to be different for everyone. For me, I'll give you what I do, and I'll give you what I would say to someone else if I'm their coach. For me, the first step is, at that time, it was actually breaking a board. So I didn't even believe that it was possible. But I went through the physical representation of breaking a board. And the way that I broke that board was with my mind. It was a physical action, but it was me changing my mind. It took me 3 times to break that board. And the reason the board broke eventually was because I finally changed my mind to, what if it's possible? Why not me? So I would say the first thing, and then from then on, once I realized that it was my mind at first, I decided at that point I'm going to go on a 3-month experiment. And I'm going to say, if all it took to change or to break that board was to change my mind, I'm going to question my thoughts for 3 months. I'm going to notice them. I don't know how they know this, but I've read that studies show that we have 60,000 thoughts every single day. 60,000. How we figure that out, I have no idea. But they say we have 60,000 thoughts every day, and that over 95% of them are the same thoughts every day. So the first thing that I would tell someone if I'm coaching them is to check your thoughts. What are you thinking? Are you thinking, here's the deal. I was always worst case scenario. I always planned for the worst case scenario, because then if anything was even slightly better than the worst, I was happy. I was like, well, it could have been worse. Who lives like that? I did. I was always half glass empty. Always. Never looked on the bright side. Never. And there was a time shortly after I started changing my life that I was like all rainbows and butterflies and unicorns and only the top part of the lighthouse and only the shiny bright spot. And I was the annoying over the top positive, right? I have found that humanity exists somewhere in the middle of all of that. That if we look around our world and we don't have some type of compassion for what is actually happening, I can't be an honest lighthouse. So first thing, check my thoughts. What am I thinking about? Am I thinking I'm not good enough, people don't like me, so why even bother, which I did a lot? Or am I thinking, you know what, I might not be where I am, or I might not be where I want to be yet, but I'm on my way. That is a better thought. That's not, I'm a lighthouse. That takes time. So I would say check the thoughts. Can you upgrade it even just a little bit? Just a tiny bit of upgrade. Second thing I would say, find a community. Community is common unity. Find people with something in common where you can go unite. Like Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. Plug yourself into people that are where you want to be. Because you know what? We're all going to have times when we're a lighthouse, and we're all going to have times when we need a lighthouse. And it's okay to be both, and it's okay to recognize that you are both. You, sir, are both. You are someone's lighthouse right now without you even knowing it. So first thing, check thoughts. Second thing, plug into a community. Third thing, check what you're putting in your mind. This is your most marvelous instrument. How are you feeding it? How are you feeding it? Check your books. Check what you're watching on TV. Dad, I love you. We don't need 6 hours of news. Right? Like, check what you're absorbing. Does that help? Yeah, good. Good.
I had a question, but I don't know if I can raise it.
You just drop it on me.
So, lighthouses exist.
Bless you. Thank you. That is where I wanted to finish. So she said lighthouses exist, but who helps maintain the lighthouses? That is exactly where I wanted to finish. So our first ever, I will promise that I will be real fast here, Gary. That sounded like I'm going deep. I'm going to go deep for 1 second, but I'll go fast. The first ever recorded, like as far back as we can look for lighthouses, the first ever was recorded in Egypt in 280 BC. 280 BC is our first ever recorded. So they've been around a long time, a lot longer than you and I. And they've changed a lot since then. The longest in use lighthouse that is currently still in use today is in Ireland. It's Hook Lighthouse in Ireland, and it was constructed somewhere between 1210 and 1230 80. 80. So it's been around, 800 years ago, give or take? It's been around for 800 years. Now, as you can imagine, in those 800 years, we've gone through some transformation, right? Same with all of us. As we step into our own personal lighthouse journey, you will go through transformations. You will go through the time when you were only made with fire. Someone had to maintain a fire all the time. And then it moved to coal, and then it moved to gas, and then it moved to paraffin, and then it moved to electricity. It wasn't until 1972 that lighthouse in Ireland, Hook Lighthouse, was changed over to electricity in 1972. From 1210 until 1996, that lighthouse needed a human to maintain it. In 1996, Hook Lighthouse was automated. It was turned into automation, which most of our lighthouses are automated now. And here's what I want you to hear about this. As a human light keeper, you work on you all the time, work on that foundation all the time so that you can become more automated. I could go up and care for my dad and his wife in their situation because I had been working on caring for myself for so many years that even though I bathed in 5 hours of news every day, it didn't take me over because I was so strong in who I'd been. It became automated. My care for myself becomes automated. However, lighthouses that are automated, every single lighthouse still needs a human for maintenance. It still requires a human for maintenance. Remember that for yourself too. And that's what I wanted to get to, is remembering that we are still human. It requires us to step back and say, you know what? Maybe not today. Maybe not today. And what's really fascinating is that as a lighthouse, even in those 5 weeks when I was with my dad helping him recover, and I stepped back and I said, I'm not going to run my business right now. Even in doing that, I am a lighthouse for someone else to say that they're not going to as well, or that it's okay to take a break, or that it's okay to change my light bulbs and get a tune-up. We need regular maintenance. We need to honor that and recognize that that's part of our journey as well. So thank you for asking that. I will share with you all day long, but I want to be really mindful of our time. So I'm going to leave you with one quote that I want you to think about. I am a lighthouse rather than a lifeboat. I do not rescue, but instead help others to find their own way to shore, guiding them by my example. Author unknown. The question for you today is, what's your example? How do you want to live your life so that you're automatically being an example for others? Thank you. Perfect. All right, friends, I'm going to invite you to take a peek around our circle. Whether you know it or not, you are a lighthouse, each and every one of you. Someone somewhere has been lit by you, by your love, by your support, by your encouragement. Today, I want to invite you to, one, what example do you want to be? Just think about that. And two, what would happen if you chose to consciously be a light keeper? Lighthouses are light keepers. Imagine if you consciously chose that. Maybe not every day, maybe not every moment. But in the moments that you can, choose to shine that light. Not because someone's going to come to you, but because it feels good for you to live from that place. Your most authentic, aligned self. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this space. I honor you. I welcome you. I invite you to bow your head gently, close your eyes gently, and take a nice deep inhale as you breathe in that light. Hold it for just a moment, thinking of a bright light. Make that bright light bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Exhale completely. One more deep inhale. Pausing at the top and a full exhale. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful day. My pleasure. Thank you.